Should you just be you, boo boo? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, this is Jill from the North Woods, talking about topics to make your life better, one small step at a time. On the surface, you be you, boo boo sounds liberating and authentic. You're living your own truth, you're not worrying about others, but that's not really how reality works, does it? We do not live in a you be you, boo boo world. We live in a shared world with families, communities, other ecosystems, other things, faith, all woven together. And whatever you do ripples outwards. We can't always live in a UBU world, but we're going to talk about that. The different mindset involved in this, and maybe where it's good and where it's dangerous, and how we can build a better, balance between it. We hear that all the time, that you be you, boo boo. And I had a coworker who used to say that to me all the time too. But it's true. Like, let me put it this way. This room in my house, this is me, boo boo. You know what I mean? I got all my books, I got all my crafts, I got some fun things on the wall. This room is really the epitome of me. It is exactly who I am, which is kind of funny. But I'm at work, I don't say everything I think. I give my best opinion when it comes to work things, but I keep it to work things, right? And I do those kinds of things when I'm in the relationships with other people. Let me give you another example. And you might find this kind of unfair, but when I was in high school, there was no such thing as geeks or nerds at that time. I mean, I guess there were nerds, but it had kind of a different connotation to it. And people didn't know anything about the geek culture. So I was in high school and I had a group of friends and they're very close to me and I liked them very dearly, but I just didn't talk to them about nerd stuff. We would talk about fun music and fun movies and we'd go do fun things and we'd have a great time. But the nerd aspect of my life, I just kind of kept to myself. I didn't talk about how when I went to Chicago, I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark and the latest Star Wars movie. And I primarily went right away in May so I could go and see the Star Wars movie right away. I never talked about that. I didn't talk about the books I read. They were all reading like romance books. That wasn't my thing. They all had posters of rock stars on their wall, and I had Captain Kirk, but we just never really talked about it. But was that me not being me, or was that just me keeping the part of me that is, the nerd part of me just kind of to myself? It just wasn't something that we had a shared experience with. In fact, when I just went back to my high school reunion, I don't know, someone asked me a question. They said, "How did you get into the world of computers? Because we didn't know that you liked that at all." And I think if you're paying attention in high school, you probably would have seen me in the computer lab more than most people. Yeah, I wrote an application and sold it to the state sport agency. It was a database application. They probably could have figured it out, but like I said, I didn't really let that particular aspect of me fly. Is that wrong? Did I conform to something I shouldn't have? Was I not living who I really was, or did I live parts of me who I was with things in ways that they appreciated? And then when I went to college and met my nerd and geek friends, then I lived that particular aspect with them too. But the funny thing of it is I was also very into bird watching and nature. And I didn't share that with my geek friends because they weren't into that. So you sort of connect with people where you're at, and you sort of always show a partial truth to yourself. In some ways, like I said, even if you have a hobby and it's of your own thing, it's fine. You don't have to share everything with everybody else. But I think we confuse the freedom of expression with freedom from consequences. That's the other dark side of it. Think about this. If you eat whatever you want, you're going to have health problems. If you drink whatever you want, you may have alcohol problems. If you do exactly what you want every time you want it, you buy what you want every second you want to buy it, that's not how it works in the world, and you will start to feel the results of that. It's the same thing with your own self-expression, that if you are you, boo-boo, and you just tell everyone your raw truth all the time, and you're absolutely honest in every single way, and you don't connect with people where you're able to make connections with them, you're going to pay a price with that self-expression. It's kind of a paradox in the way that if you are completely purely self-focused, it also doesn't make you happier. That's the part of the thing that they started telling people, that you just let your freak fly, you be you, boo-boo, you do what you wanna do, that's what's gonna make you happy, and the truth of the matter is, it doesn't. It's something called the paradox of choice, that the more we try to express ourselves in unlimited ways, almost the more anxious and dissatisfied we become. And sometimes, like I said, how it will distance us from other people. And I think too that I'm a Christian, and I think the scriptures pushes hard on the you be you boo boo. Paul says all things are lawful, but not all things are beneficial. He's saying that freedom exists. We can do what we want to do, but it has limits, and those limits are usually for the sake of other people, and it's to the sake of being beneficial to ourselves. That we can do all these things, but not every one of them is good for us, right? We have to be a part of a community. We have to be a part of sacrificing for other people, being there for other people, putting ourselves aside temporarily to do something for someone else or even for work. I noticed, I see, like I said, I've been around enough. I'm not that old, but I've been around enough where I've seen different generations of people come into the office space, and each of them have sort of a variety of the UBU idea. So I'm just going to let me kind of hang out there. I remember I was talking to a coworker, and at one point he said something about, I don't know, he was telling a joke, but how he didn't have to prepare for the apocalypse because the apocalypse happens and he's just going to go and do everyone in. And I went, well, that's the most frightening thing I've ever heard. And he's like, well, I'm just telling you the truth. And I'm like, maybe we don't have to be that truthful at work. I don't know. But the idea is that this isn't really about an anti-UBU boo-boo. It is just that you don't have to be you at every moment, and you also don't have to think and speak every thought that crosses your brain, because first of all, you might be wrong. And second of all, you have to take into account what it is you're saying. People, and we've seen this recently, will say the most awful things, the most awful things. And I wonder, do you hear yourself speak? Do you actually hear yourself saying these words coming out of your mouth? So that's the idea, that you have to think about what it is. Marcus Aurelius even talked about living in harmony with nature and community. Our job is not to stand out like a big neon light, like in the corner of my thing, but in a way, it's our part is to live well within this web of humanity we have, our brothers and sisters across this world. And ancient cultures looked at that too. They never assumed individuality first. Tribal societies, clans, kinsmen, the Romans valuated the pietas, the duty to country and family above self-expression. And even in early Americans, this idea of rugged individualism was built on top of community. People talk about rugged individualism, but farmers didn't survive winter without their neighbors, without raising barns and harvesting together. This idea of the cowboy out on the range by themselves, me against the world, is more Hollywood than reality. But instead, we need community. And it's just in our nature. We see it in nature too. No creature just does its own things. Wolves returning to Yellowstone shaped the river because of their coming together, and their behaviors affected the entire ecosystem. Humanity is the same way. We are never acting alone. So social media is supercharged with the you be you boo boo. Live your own truth, do your own thing. And it's also like self-branding, your personal elevator statement. I mean, I know I had one too. I have one too. But ironically, the algorithm is towards conformity, where all of a sudden, instead of everyone becoming individuals, we're all becoming grouped up, ganged up. doing the same dance and the same aesthetic, wearing the same clothes and the same lip filler. And so it turns out that oftentimes when you tell people to be yourselves, you're really just telling them to be like everybody else so that you get likes, so that you get popular. And that's just not how it goes. At the same time, we also look at you do you gets used for selfishness. That someone overspends or ghosts on another relationship, bails on commitments, and they say, I needed self-care. I needed self-care. I know you needed help moving, and that's the idea, is that we sort of use these almost even too as excuses to not help people around us, not be there for other people. So then the question is what is actually the reality of what we can do? Certainly not blind conformity, certainly not being like everybody else, erasing our individuality, but instead, you be you for other people. You be you in what makes you unique and what you can bring to the table, what you build, what you bring to a project in your community, what you help other people with, your creativity, your humor, your compassion, even your quirks. That's what matters most because they are gifts to your community, but you're going to have to identify them. We just all got done with the brand new iPhones coming out. And someone said, well, what are you going to do over the weekend? And I said, well, we all got iPhones. I bet you I'm going to be doing a lot of tech support. To the point of where someone says, well, that doesn't sound like very much fun. That's my community. That's the role I play. I'm the talker. I'm the tech person. My friends, when I need help on something, they're there for me in other ways. We're all part of this ecosystem. This oak tree doesn't apologize for being an oak, but it also just doesn't do it by itself. The acorns feed the animals, the roots hold the soil, the leaves shade the forest. It is about the oak being its oak and its gifts going outwards. That's kind of how it is. I mean, the healthiest people I know don't obsess over self-expression. They find joy in contribution. They find joy in taking something that they're good at, that is part of their true identity, and bringing it out to other people and making that known in the course of being with other people. And so here's some steps, I think when you're looking at this is, when you're thinking about what you're going to do or what you're going to say, who benefits from that? If you're making a big choice or, deciding to do something. I always kind of think about that there's a lot of like people, tech, rich people. And, they buy a piece of land on Hawaii and they decide that they're going to build this wall that prevents everyone else from getting to the beach. Did they ever once pause to think, what effect does this have on anyone else? No, of course they didn't. But I mean, if we would start to ask more about what does my choice do for benefiting other people, I think that would help us get that direction. That's not to say that you can't do things for yourself. I do things for myself. I made this room. Like I said, this room is my comfy zone. I got a nice TV. I got a couch over here. I got all my computer monitors and my nerd gadgets here. This is kind of my, my cove, but I don't live in this place all the time. I'm out there with my friends. And so I'm shifting my habits towards outwardness. I am taking habits and reframing them as how can I help other people? If you love to cook, can you cook for a neighbor or your church or your community center? If you like reading, have you ever thought about getting in a book club or reading books with other people or helping a teenager who's struggling to read, helping them, learn how to read? Long time ago, well, not a long time ago. It was right before the pandemic. I used to work in a study hall. So I'd go to study hall for an hour every week. And then my job was to go around and help students in the study hall. And I remember the best question, I got a good math question, which I love math, and I like that. But someone asked me about this book that was taking place as essentially in World War II. And they said, I just don't really understand what this book's about. And I said, you know what this book's about? I said, think about the 60s, right? We live in a big place that had protests in the 60s. And this book is a protest against World War II. And the kid was astonished. He said, well, wait, why? It was a separate piece. That was the book. And he said, everyone loves, well, not loves, everyone was in favor of us fighting in World War II. And I said, no, it was a 50-50 split in this nation. This was a book protesting World War II and our involvement in it. And I used my power of reading to help a student see a book in a whole new way. And that just thrilled me. You can tell, I still say that. But you can shift your gifts and habits to helping someone else. And then the next part is the next time you think about or someone tells you, you be you, try flipping it to me for you. What can I do to help make everything a little bit better, make the community a little bit better? What can I do to make the world and the people around me? But I think it's not even just about making the world and people around me. I hear this at work, like I said. Everybody in work is in it for themselves. When can I leave work? When can I go on my vacation? When can I do my thing? And they never think about the company, the owner of the company, or what's going on with the other coworkers. I worked for a tech startup. We all depended on each other because at any moment we could collapse into a big pile of mess and not be a company anymore. And I remember I was going for a walk and I was walking with the owner of the company. And we were walking by this big yacht boat. And I said, are you ever going to buy a yacht boat like this? And because he's kind of the richest person I ever knew, which wasn't that rich, to be honest with you. And he said, I just look forward to the day when I can get through a year's worth of payroll without mortgaging my house. Everyone thought of him as rich. And yet his whole thing was, I'm loaning out money against my house to pay your salaries. We're all in this together. And when we work together in that way that we're all trying to do our obligations, fulfill our responsibilities towards each other, because it's not just about me trying to make this owner of this company rich. It's about all of us in this tech startup trying to make it work for each other, trying to make it so that we can all work together and build something. And we did build something together. But the truth is that when we overemphasize our authenticity, we hurt our work, we hurt our families, we hurt society at large. And so the idea is bring yourself, because that's why you got hired, because of your skills and your value and your point of view, but not to the point where it disrespects your boss, your company, your colleagues, you create conflicts, you leave people in the lurch. I can't even begin to tell you how many times something went wrong with the software. And I say, I need at least 4 people here. We got to call every customer and let them know, this thing happened. And I would end up being there by myself, me personally calling all of them. So the idea is that everyone was being them, boo-boo, and it caused me to suffer. But, the idea is, and we let deadline slips, teams collapse, customers suffer, and eventually the company suffers, we all get laid off, and we all lose jobs that we maybe really liked. The workplace depends on personal discipline, professionalism, collaboration. That means me working with you. And if you can't, fake who you are, I guess, can you just kind of tie in some of your quirks together, get along with people a little bit better, right? Not tell them that you're going to go and murder them during the apocalypse, that kind of thing. Be professional about it. But the irony is that the person who always just does themselves at work, like I said, oftentimes becomes nobody. They're considered to be toxic at work. Nobody picks them to do projects. And so they get kind of stagnant, to be honest with it. Same thing at work. Imagine if you were imagine you were saying to your kids, well, that's just who I am. I'm impatient and I'm not going to help you with your homework. They'll grow up feeling neglected and terrible. Or if you had a spouse and you say, well, I'm sorry, it's just not me to compromise on things. That's just me. Your marriage is headed for disaster. That's the idea. Or imagine if, you show up every year to your family reunion biting your tongue when Aunt Marge starts on her annual rant, but she's just being her. That's just the way it is, right? So we all like people who get along with us, and so we should all become the kind of people who try to get along with us. If we had traffic laws that no one paid attention to, I watched a person drive right through a red light today. He is lucky he did not kill the person that was going the other way. The world doesn't work if we don't follow traffic laws, pay our taxes, treat public spaces nicely so they don't fall apart. in a world of you be you, think about civics. Think about our society. Think about us being social creatures. Again, if we always think about us being first, the civilization itself it will necessarily crack at that. Maybe that is why we're cracking. So we don't want to become robots. We're not trying to suppress who we are as people, but what we're trying to bring is our gifts, our talents, and then serving other people with it. The idea is that we're going to, I don't know, think about it like this, birds, right? So the idea is one wing is being yourself and the other wing is serving others. And when we flap both these wings together, that's when we get somewhere. There you go. There's my weird analogy of the day. The healthiest people are the ones who learn self-expression and when to hold it back for the sake of society, family, friends, work. It's about balance and not a betrayal of self. I am me, like, I'm just going to say this and then we'll call it quits for the day. But like I said, this recording room is me. It's my fun room to be in. I watch nerd shows all the time. I am a giant geek. I love science fiction. It's what I watch. I go over to my friend's house. We don't watch any of that. That's not what we watch. I don't really even talk to them about Foundation or whatever show I'm watching at that moment. It doesn't interest them. But we talk about things that mutually interest ourselves together. So when you're at work, pick one moment to put your team above your needs. When you're in your family life, notice one place where you can say, just saying, oh, well, that's just me, is hurting the people you love. And in society, think about the things that you're doing that don't help your community, that don't help the people around you. You are part of a community, whether you think so or not. So anyway, those are some thoughts. Like I said, you're not really putting yourself away, but we don't really need to be raw, unchecked authenticity. But we need people to both be themselves while at the same time being reliable contributors. That kind of balance changes everything. All right, everyone, thanks so much. I appreciate you watching, listening. If you have something to say to me, you can email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. You can put a comment right here in the channel. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much and have a great day.